My name is Bruno Silva, and now we have the next panel, Fair Play, How to Promote Integrity in Esports. With esports getting bigger and more important, a question arises: how to promote competitive integrity and fair play in games and competitions. Maria Tamellini and Rodrigo Tamellini Ayres from GamerSafer discuss how to face tech and cultural challenges to prevent cheating, crimes, fraud, and abusive behavior. We have simultaneous translation into English. We have Maria Tamellini, Rodrigo Ayres, and our moderator, Rodrigo Zambon. You may take it away, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Bruno. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another session at the amazing 2021 Big Festival. It is a pleasure to be here with Maria and Rodrigo from GamerSafer. First, let's have a round of introductions. I would like our speakers to talk about themselves and about GamerSafer. Let me get started. My name is Rodrigo Tamellini. In my professional journey, I've worked in corporations and big tech companies with Asus, LG, and Intel. And I had an opportunity to put together my career and my passion at Intel because I worked with the gaming department here in Silicon Valley in California for a couple of years. And it's been 2 years since I joined the team of GamerSafer, and we'll be talking more about it during the presentation. Hi, everyone. My name is Maria. GamerSafer is my second business. My background is in social impact, so I was able to put these two passions together. I'm a gamer, my kids are gamers, and my vision is to make for a more inclusive and diverse world for everyone. Great. Before we get started with integrity and safety in the world of online games and esports, if anyone in the audience is not really familiar with this universe, what does this universe look like? Great. It's a good idea to start talking about online competitions because I think some people don't know about it. When we talk about esports, people usually think about the biggest stars and global tournaments and millions of views and very robust championships. But the esports universe is a lot broader. It starts with amateur play, and it does have a lot of scale. You have different platforms, you have different profiles, different players with different backgrounds, and also different motivations. We usually have an analogy with regular sports. Think about soccer. Of course, you have stadiums and sponsors and big soccer players, but you have a lot of neighborhood tournaments. And for these tournaments, players are in love what they do, in love with what they do, and they invest a lot of time and money into what they're doing. So we have the amateur section, the semi-professional section, and the professional world. Sometimes we have small rewards, medium rewards, or big rewards. We have different formats as well. We may have lightning bolt tournaments or long-lasting tournaments that are also open tournaments or invite-only tournaments. Sometimes you have to pay to register, sometimes you don't. In each of these different categories, we also have a lot of nuance. And we have specific challenges when it comes to safety and integrity. And here's something really interesting. We've seen an increase in the matching between esports and education. Esports are now being used as a platform for scholarships, for example. And through esports, we're able to deliver content and to teach the next generation of gamers on different skills. We can also connect that to the curriculum they have to learn. And this is something really cool we've been experiencing. I really like it. Education is another love of mine. Awesome. And our audience may have noticed that this is a very complex scenario. You have different models, different formats, and we're not only talking about sponsored official championships, because we do have smaller tournaments, more scattered out activities. And by the way, if you are in the audience, please send us questions about this topic. So let's get into the main problem. Within all the complexity that we see for online gaming, online competitions, tournaments, championships, and everything you've described, what are the main challenges to create a better, safer environment? What kind of hurdle do you face? What kind of problem do you run into? Our biggest challenges are fraud related. But we have been talking a lot about toxicity, and this has been gaining momentum in this ecosystem. So these are the two biggest pillars. When it comes to fraud, and of course, it all depends on the type of competitive environment, but overall, when it comes to fraud, is that we see fake accounts or doubled accounts. In these cases, gamers create a number of accounts in an online tournament to increase their odds of winning. So this is identity fraud. We also have fraud related to their levels. We talk about smurfing. So sometimes players are from a much higher level, but they have a much lower level account to make it easier for them to win an amateur tournament or an entry-level championship. We see other challenges that are related to a more pro player tournament with match fixing. In these cases, two teams could kind of get to an agreement on who is going to win because there's some betting going on in the background. So in these cases, we see fraud happening because some of these teams are trying to get financial benefits from it. These are the main frauds that we see. We also see cheating, of course. People may use illegal tools. And then we have the other pillar related to toxicity. And this is something we basically see in every digital platform nowadays. There's bullying, there's harassment, there's hate speech, there's racism, there's sexism. And Maria can certainly talk a little bit more about the challenge of sexism in esports. Yeah, I think because of this problem, we see fewer women interested in competing professionally. When we don't take care of this environment and we don't make for a healthy environment, women are not going to be interested in competing, and then we'll have less diversity, and we won't be creating a gaming universe for everyone. Recently, we saw in the US that 90% of scholarships delivered within the esports world were delivered and were granted to male players. So, this is a challenge for us in the whole ecosystem because we have different groups and different organizations that should be working together to make for a more diverse experience.
Yeah, what you said is very interesting, Maria, because at the end of the day, this also creates economic loss for the companies behind these games. So if you have an environment and then within those communities in this environment there's toxicity, what is happening is you're losing your audience and consequently you're losing money. So it's not just an important strategy for diversity and social inclusion, but it's also a major economic challenge for companies. That's what happened when the community itself prevents the game from expanding into a broader community. Now, I'd like you to talk about other consequences from these challenges you've mentioned. What other things could be caused for that game and that community and that competitive environment? I think Maria has started to address that already. It works like a siphon. Those types of challenges occur from the amateur level to the professional level on different in different magnitudes, so to speak. So as you go up the ladder and you see those challenges occurring, you see people having racist or sexist acts or being bullies. That sort of uh, chips away at your motivations and removes many talents that we could have had in the competition. So it really compromises the professional journey and the path that players have toward becoming professionals. But as you said yourself, there's also the financial issue behind all of that. So this is a tremendous risk for companies behind these tournaments. Most of them rely heavily on sponsorships, and naturally, no brand wants to be associated with any type of scandal or fraud or any other big event relating to these challenges that we've mentioned. And we've seen a number of events that we've dealt with across the world where players would lose impressive sponsorships precisely for running into those types of problems. So that really puts the feasibility of these platforms in jeopardy. Excellent. Maria, do you have anything to add? Well, speaking not only about esports, but multiplayer sports in general or multiplayer games, I would say about 60% of players have experienced some sort of harassment in games. As a consequence of that, 28% of these players have stopped playing these games or instead decided to prioritize another type of game, really because of those experiences. So obviously, this is a terrible experience, and I can talk from my personal experience where I would stop playing some game because of what I had lived in that environment. But obviously, there's the financial side because a lot of money is put into bringing players to be part of that community. And then when the community doesn't embrace him or becomes toxic toward him, you ultimately lose that investment. So these are sort of two sides of the same story. Obviously, we want to provide a positive experience for players, but on the business side, there's also a lot of user churn. These are sort of the two sides of the same coin. Well, so for you publishers who are spending millions on acquisition and you're spending all that money to acquire users, it really doesn't matter if the community is not really embracing you. So now on the topic of solutions and what we could do in these scenarios, we have a question here that asks, what are how does punishment work for these players who do not adopt fair or do not adhere to a fair play uh, attitude? Well, unquestionably, platforms have uh, devoted a lot more efforts into identifying these abusive uh, actions and punishing the these players. So also, if you're cheating, you have to know that you will be punished. Now, what's the challenge about that? Within platforms, there's a high level of anonymity. So if I ban a specific account and that person, the person behind that account, is obtaining money by doing that, what he'll do is he'll create other accounts to try to come back to the competition and really repeat that inappropriate behavior or reincur in that behavior. So to be able to work with authenticating and verifying players is really a trend within the sports community. And what we do within GameSafer, most of the services we offer for the esports platforms today using our technology is to verify and authenticate users to ensure that whoever's competing in that tournament are those who should be competing. And if by any chance that user has been banned, they won't be able to re enter the competition via a fake account. I just wanted to add to what you said. This has been a huge challenge, even more so now that all all challenges or championships are occurring online because of the pandemic. So there's no way to control that physically during tournaments to make sure that whoever's competing is the person who should be competing. Yes, and even before the pandemic, that was an important case because the scenario for in-person competition is the setting for huge stars. And even at that level, the incidence of problems such as the ones we're talking about is a lot lower because these are well-known faces. And if someone does something like cheating, they might ultimately betray themselves and they are tied to contracts. There's a lot more going on. The stakes are much higher. So, a lot more of the competitive scenario was taking place in face to face or in person events. And I believe that's the trend once we have passed this moment. Well, there's also the case when you have a smaller competition with fewer players, there are other types of mechanisms. You ask the player to log into Discord, but when there are several competitions taking place at the same time, that's not a possibility to do that manually. So we saw the opportunity to be able to help the segment in some way. Exactly, when you have a 4 or 5 person tournament, you ask the person to log on to Zoom and you see that those are the players that should be competing. But now we're seeing hundreds of thousands of tournaments occurring a year. So you have to be able to scale this sort of control. I wanted to pose another question about multiple accounts, particularly smurfing. There's a question here asking, would you say that Smurf accounts should be punished somehow or be warned, receive a warning within the game? And then they talk about the young prodigies that still do not have large accounts. Well, I would say that smurfing would be justifiable in a few situations. For example, I have my main account and where I'm really concerned about my statistics because that's what I show to my sponsors. And I want to try a new strategy. I want to broaden my range of options. So I have this second account that I use to practice. I think that's absolutely reasonable. But obviously, you have to read what the terms of service in each platform say. But I believe the main trouble with smurfing is when the player used that to get a competitive advantage within a paid tournament. Say he wants to log in with a different character just to, you know, get a thicker skin. I think that could be explained. That's justifiable, as I said. Now, if I have a player that's going into a prize-worthy championship, a world-class championship, and he's doing that within that scenario, then you're trying to play the system, which is not acceptable. Yeah, and then there are people who play really well and open several accounts where they will move forward and forward within the game, and then they sell that account, which is also illegal. Yeah, they create a business model that's based on falsehood. Exactly. You see accounts from $1 to $20 dollars within these smurfing schemes, and usually people buying those accounts are not uh, people who simply said a swear word within a tournament. You're usually talking about fraudsters who will purchase those accounts because they believe they can make a lot more money via that path, and that's terrible for the environment as a whole. Yes, there's a study that says this market represents $1 billion. Well, you see, so it's bad for players because you'll make it less fun for those who want to fairly learn and progress and make their path, so to speak. And you'll also make it more difficult for those promoting those tournaments. So everyone loses. Yeah, also, we're now coming to the end of our session. It's been so fast, right? It feels like we've been talking for just 2 seconds. But I think it would be interesting for you guys to make your last remarks talking about the importance of having a fair, competitive environment, but also knowing what can be done about it. Obviously, thinking about GamerSafer, how can you help to promote fair play in a broader sense? Well, as we said before, we work with platforms that work worldwide, especially in terms of authenticating and verifying players in a scalable way. So I think the important thing would be credibility in any platform. Whoever's joining the game have to be sure that that's a fair game. And we think that most players obviously just want to have fun, but they also want the platform to be fair. We believe organizations have a really important role to play, and they have to show that this is important. They have to show their audience that these are strongly held valued within those organizations, and that's something sponsors are also looking for. So it doesn't matter whether you're just having fun or pursuing a professional career, having a way to make sure that you have fair play is a much more pleasurable way of doing things. Maria? Well, I think Rodrigo pretty much said it all. But I believe that delivering these experiences is critical to cultivate the interest, especially of future generations. I want my children, I have 2 children now, and I want them to have the opportunity to soon be able to play in a safe scenario, and I want them to learn the right values, just as we have within regular sports. That's what we're working toward, and that's why we're joining other segments and other organizations which are also working to promote that. We're also open to talk more. I mean, our time is running up, but feel free to add us on LinkedIn. My email is mariagamersafer or maria at gamersafer.com, and his is um, also Rodrigo at gamersafer.com. Well, I'd like to thank you guys for this experience. This has been great. I'm sure this enlightened a lot of people about this. Bruno, you have the floor. Thank you guys, Rodrigo and Maria. This was a great panel. And our sessions at Big Festival are incredible. We have a lot of great things coming up. So we'll be back in 5 minutes with our next speak. Stay tuned.
Big Festival 2021, the biggest games festival in Latin America.